Hello everyone, this is LeetCode 20, valid parentheses. So basically we're given an input string S and it can contain these characters, right? Opening or closing parentheses, opening or closing brace, opening or closing bracket. So opening brackets must be closed by the same type of bracket. Opening brackets must be closed in the correct order, and every closed bracket has a corresponding open bracket of the same type. So here are some examples, right? That should return true. Opening and closing parentheses. Here's another input that should return true. See, they're all closed by the same type of bracket in the proper order. And here's an example of where we would return false. An opening parentheses, but it's closed by an actual bracket, and it's not closed by a closing parentheses. So there's a few approaches to this problem. I'm gonna go through the brute force approach. It's really like the most simple and straightforward way to kind of do this problem, especially if you've never done this problem and you encounter it in an interview. This is probably the solution that you would do. I mean, maybe you would do a more elegant approach, I don't know, but I think most people would probably do the brute force approach, which is what I'm going to show you. And I might go over on a kind of more elegant approach afterwards, but I'm just going to go over the straightforward approach first, the brute force approach. So we're going to have an error variable. Initially, it's going to be false. Now, this error variable, basically, we're going to iterate through the string. And if we encounter a problem, we're going to set this error variable to true. This error Boolean variable really is just like, it's just a flag variable. Okay, next we're going to create a stack. We'll just call it my stack. Now let's iterate through the string. So basically, if our character is an opening parentheses, or our character is an opening brace, or our character is an opening bracket. In those cases, we're going to add the corresponding character into the stack. Okay. Now, we're going to have a case maybe where our character is one of the closing types, such as this, such as this, or such as this. Now, in that case, basically, first, what we're going to have to do is we need to make sure that when we encounter this, the stack is not empty. If the stack is empty, then we already have a problem, right? So we need to make sure that the stack is not empty before we do any popping of any sort from the stack. Because ideally, right, if this is our example string, we're going to add the opening parentheses to the stack. When we encounter the closing, we need to pop from the stack. But before we even pop, we need to make sure there's actually something to pop, right? Otherwise, we're going to run into problems. That's why we need to make sure that the stack is not empty. If it is empty, we set the error variable to true, and we basically just break out, right? Now we're going to do... Now, if we encounter this code next, which is the popping, we're assuming... Well, we're not assuming. We know that the stack is actually not empty, right? So here's where we do the popping from the stack. Now, this element before is the element that we pop from the stack. And again, this closing parentheses, it does not get added to the stack. So when we're popping whatever came before that, which we're assuming is a closing or is an opening parentheses. And if it's not an open parentheses, then we know we have a problem, right? So for example, we'll say if the opening parentheses is not this element before, the element that we popped, right, then we have a problem. So our error will be true. Now, I'll kind of go over some examples too at the end here, just so you kind of understand, like, logically what this code is doing step by step. Again, here, if not my stack, error is true, break. Again, we need to make sure that the stack is not empty before we do anything. Now, what we're going to do again is we're going to do the popping operation, right? Now here, basically, we need to have an opening brace. If an opening brace is not equal to the element before, then, well, we have some problems. Error is equal to true. Now here, again, make sure our stack is not empty. And I do have a problem here. Thankfully I caught it. Okay. And we need a break, right? Now we're gonna basically, if we encounter the closing bracket, we're gonna pop from our stack. And if closing bracket is not the element before, then our error is true. Now, when we exit this for loop, basically our stack should be empty, assuming everything works right. So we need to check if our stack has something or the error is true. Now we're gonna return false because we don't have a valid parentheses. Otherwise, or return false. Yeah, if our error is true, we return false, or the stack has something in it. We have a problem, so we're gonna return false because we don't have a valid parentheses. Otherwise, we return true. Now, I'll go over some examples here. So let's say this will be our string. This will be our stack, right? Now, if our string is something like this, basically we're going to add this to our stack. Then we're going to encounter this closing parentheses. And when we encounter the closing parentheses, we're going to go through. Our stack is not empty, no. So we're going to pop. This gets popped, right? Is this thing that we popped just now, is that equal to a closing parentheses? Yes, it is, right? So basically we proceed. Now we're going to go to the next character, which would be this third character. Now basically, when we encounter this second closing parentheses, we're going to see that if not, my stack is going to execute. Why? Because the stack is empty, right? So if the stack is empty, the error is going to be set to true, and we're going to break. So this particular example that I'm showing here would return false. Now, let's do something like this, for example. Now, when we do opening parentheses, that gets added to the stack. Another opening parentheses that gets added to the stack. Now, when we encounter the closing parentheses, we're going to pop from the stack, and we'll see that they're equal, right? And so we'll proceed. However, we're going to exit the for loop, but we're going to have something in the stack, as you can see, that never got popped. That's why we need this if my stack part, not just this error is equal to true. So this is kind of the brute force approach to this. Pretty simple, right? Pretty straightforward. If you've never seen this problem, this is probably something you do. But as you can see, this code it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty logical, but it's just kind of messy, right? Like a bunch of conditions. I mean, it's really not the worst code you could write. I mean, but really probably not the most readable either. So now I'm going to show you kind of some more a more elegant approach to this that you could use. All right, this is going to be like our more elegant solution. So it's very similar to the brute force approach, but we're going to use a hash map. And basically what a hash map is going to do is that it's going to allow us to pretty much use a hash map to do a lot of the heavy lifting so that we don't have to do a lot of like the checking between parentheses and braces and brackets. We don't have to do all that checking manually. We can rely on the hash map a lot more. So we're going to set this opening parentheses key to this value, set this key to that value, and set this key to that value, right? Likewise, we're still going to use, likewise to the brute force approach, we're still going to use a stack. So we're going to iterate through the string, and basically we're going to say if char in brackets stack.append char. Now, basically what if char in brackets is doing is we're saying if the character that we're currently on is in the hash map, we're going to add that to the stack. Now, when I say in the hash map, it's what this is checking is it's checking is the character a key in the hash map. So if the character is this, if the character is this, if the character is this, then we're going to add that to the stack, right? Else, now for this else, we're not going to use a Boolean flag variable like we did before. We're just going to outright state in what case is it not a valid parentheses, and then basically return false for those cases, right? So we're going to say if the length of the stack is 0, we can return false. Or if the char is not equal to the brackets of whatever gets popped from the stack. In that case, we're going to return false. Now, I'll just go over some examples. So if we have something like this is our string, and this is our stack. When we go through here, we add that to the stack. Here's our stack. Now, when we encounter the second character, we're going to pop this from the stack and check that as what the value of that is. So basically plug this into here because this is what gets popped from the stack. So that would give us this value. Is this value equal to this character that we're on? Of course it is. Well, that's great. Now let's go here. Well, if the problem now for this particular input is the stack is 0, the length of the stack is 0, so it would return false, right? Now let's say, for example, instead we have something like this. This gets added to the stack. However, when we go here, we're gonna pop from the stack for the opening. We're gonna pop the opening parentheses, put that into the stack. Or not in the stack, we're going to put that into the hash map. The value is going to be this value. Is this value equal to this character we're on? No, they're different, right? And so we would return false. So that's how basically we check cases where the parentheses is not valid. Now, though, down here, we need to return not true. We actually don't want to return true. We want to return the length of the stack being 0, right? Now, why do we do this? Because let's say we have an input like this, right? So basically we would say if char in brackets, put that into the stack. We'll never enter the else statement, right? Because there's only one character, and it's an opening bracket. So we would exit this for loop. If we return true, it would return true, but it wouldn't be a valid parentheses because it doesn't have a closing bracket, right? However, if we return the length of the stack being 0, this would return false, right? Which it should return false. That's why we need this, because basically we want to return true if we exit this for loop, except we also need to account for cases where the stack isn't empty. Like if this were our input, right? Because again, if this were our input, we wouldn't want to return true. We would only want to return true in cases where our stack is empty and we exit the for loop without any problems. So if that's our case, then that's our code, then should be fine, right? Now, yeah, this problem is much more elegant, right? Like compared to our brute force solution. And not only that, it's so much more readable. And this is the approach you want to try and remember and actually use. And it's really not that hard to kind of think through this, but you want to use this solution because when you're in an interview and you're encountering this problem, you want to come up with a solution, not just the solution that you understand, but a solution that your interviewer can kind of understand and read. Because if it's only you that can understand and read the solution, and it's like you might understand it, but if it's like overly complicated and it's hard to read, then you're setting yourself up for failure. Because you want to make sure your interview is comfortable as well, with you know your code and making sure it's readable. So hopefully, this kind of more optimal and more readable solution makes sense to you. I try to explain it as best I can, but of course, if you have any question, you can let me know. But I don't think this problem is that difficult in particular, as long as you kind of understand, kind of step by step, how we're checking things. So yeah, I hope this helped you.